In 1987, on a mountainside 1,740 meters high in China, scientists found an astonishing number, exactly 3 trees. They were the last 3 ancient trees left on Earth of the Baishan fir, a species that had existed since prehistoric times. Facing the risk of extinction, millions of dollars, modern cloning technology, and a 24/7 monitoring system were mobilized to protect them. Yet an ironic truth unfolded: even though they were cared for with the most advanced resources, these 3 individuals quietly refused to reproduce. Across 10 long years of monitoring, fewer than 3 seedlings appeared beneath the parent trees. Why would a living species close off its own chance of survival at the very moment it was being protected most strictly? The answer did not lie in sophisticated technology. It was hidden deep beneath the cold soil, a natural secret humans had missed for decades. Before the ecological upheavals unfolded, the landscape of East Asia was a completely different world. During the last ice age tens of thousands of years ago, global temperatures were far lower than today. The Baishan fir was not rare at all. These trees covered valleys, drove their roots deep into cold soil, and formed enormous conifer forests. They were the foundation of the ecosystem, sheltering countless cold-adapted creatures and acting as the biological heartbeat of an entire era. Their genome was perfectly designed to endure bone-chilling cold, with silver bands beneath their needles that helped optimize absorption of the weak light of prehistoric winters. When Earth began its global warming cycle, the giant ice sheets melted. The climate changed profoundly. This cold-loving tree faced a survival pressure it had never encountered before. It did the only thing it could do to adapt: retreat. It abandoned the valleys that were growing warmer and gradually climbed higher up the mountain slopes. This migration unfolded across thousands of generations. From one valley to another, from one mountainside to the next, the species kept pushing its survival boundary upward until there was nowhere left to retreat. Baishan Peak, nearly 1,800 meters high, covered in mist year-round and saturated with moisture, became its final fortress. The once vast biological population was now compressed into a patch of land only a few dozen square meters wide. At this elevation, the trees were safe from temperature changes in the lowlands. But they entered an even harsher ecological situation. Climate warming did not only push the Baishan fir up the mountain, it also brought new enemies upward from the foothills. Changes in latitude and temperature unintentionally triggered the fiercest battle for living space in the history of this tree, a battle for which it was completely unprepared. The collapse of an ecosystem rarely happens like a loud explosion. Sometimes, it unfolds so slowly that no one notices until everything is already standing at the edge of extinction. The warming climate opened the way for quiet replacement forces. Native broadleaf trees and massive bamboo populations began sprouting from the lower mountain slopes, spreading relentlessly and moving straight toward the summit zone. They grew at an overwhelming speed, stretching broad canopies across the sky. They stole sunlight, the vital energy source for young fir seedlings. Their roots tangled densely underground, draining the limited water and nutrients from the steep rocky slopes. Completely overwhelmed in both number and growth speed, the Baishan fir gradually lost the space it had stubbornly held for hundreds of thousands of years. The numbers recorded across decades drew a severe downward curve. In 1963, when botanist M.H. Wu first entered this cloud forest, he recorded 7 individuals. 7 trees clung to the steep hillside, their roots exposed among violent storms. But harsh weather continued to strike. Major floods and landslides caused by unstable geological structure tore open the slopes and swept away the weaker individuals. From 7 trees, the number fell to exactly 3 aging individuals by 1987. Each tree carried the scars of more than a century of struggling against snowstorms. Their existence was so fragile that the International Union for Conservation of Nature listed them among the 12 plant species at highest risk of disappearing forever from the planet. Before we go deeper into humanity's difficult efforts to reverse this perfect number of 3, take a moment to look at the environment around where you live. Is there a bird, an insect, or a native tree that was once familiar in your childhood memory but has now quietly vanished without anyone noticing? Scroll down to the comments, and leave its name along with the area where you live. I am collecting data on small-scale ecosystem declines happening every day around the world, and the place where you live may be reflecting part of a tragedy similar to what happened on Baishan Peak. Now, back to the last 3 trees. When their living space had shrunk to the absolute limit, humans decided to intervene. But that intervention opened a chain of mistakes that exposed the limits of human knowledge. Facing the risk that the Baishan fir could vanish forever, research agencies immediately launched emergency rescue campaigns. The scale of this rescue operation was greater than anything the scientific world had ever seen for a plant species. More than 50 forestry and molecular biology experts from 8 major Chinese research institutes were mobilized. They set up a pulley cable network stretching for kilometers to transport tons of laboratory equipment, temperature sensor machines, and solar power stations up to the 1,800-meter peak through many freezing winters. Each ancient tree was given an ecological insurance value reaching millions of yuan, and an enormous budget was approved simply to keep these 3 individuals alive day by day. 3 of the original 7 trees were dug up from the ground, carefully carried down the mountain, and moved to modern botanical gardens equipped with advanced temperature control technology in Beijing and Hangzhou, under the care of leading experts. Living behind reinforced glass and protective barriers, these 3 trees slowly withered. They did not die immediately, but weakened month by month. Despite fertile soil and a perfect irrigation system, the experts were completely confused. Scientists then shifted toward more complex biological techniques. Since 1979, foresters had climbed the few remaining wild individuals, cut the healthiest young shoots, and grafted them onto the rootstock of Japanese fir, a related species with superior resilience. This method brought a ray of hope. The grafted branches took root, grew, and even produced cones. After that, laboratories at Zhejiang University began applying micropropagation technology. They placed plant tissues into sterile culture media, and performed delicate cellular-level procedures to preserve the fragile seed embryos inside before they weakened. They succeeded in creating seedlings in test tubes. However, the full genome report of the Baishan fir, published in 2026, dealt a heavy blow to these efforts. DNA analysis showed extremely high homozygosity, an inevitable consequence of a genetic bottleneck. A grafted branch, or a seedling grown in a test tube, is essentially just a clone, carrying the same poor genetic sequence as the 3 mother trees. They completely lack the genetic diversity needed to resist new diseases or future climate changes. More importantly, despite every achievement in the laboratory, wild nature remained silent. The 3 ancient trees on the mountain peak were not sterile. Every spring, they still opened pale pollen clusters. Mountain winds carried the pollen away, cones formed, and seeds still dropped onto the forest floor. But during a full decade of continuous monitoring from 2007 to 2017, fewer than 3 seedlings appeared on the ground beneath them. They could reproduce. A new seed generation still formed, but germination itself was locked shut. The problem was not in the genetic code of the tree. The problem lay in a complex ecological system that had been broken, and humans had been looking in the wrong direction all along. The answer to both the failure in botanical gardens and the inability to reproduce on Baishan Peak finally came from an unexpected hidden corner: microorganisms and the layer of leaf litter. In-depth soil studies discovered that the Baishan fir is a species completely dependent on an ectomycorrhizal fungal network. This tree was never an independent organism, capable of surviving on its own. Its roots must connect with microscopic fungal threads, woven deep into the soil of Baishan Peak. This fungal network functions like a giant auxiliary root system, breaking down stubborn minerals, absorbing water, and transferring them into the tree's roots. In return, the tree provides the fungi with precious carbon from photosynthesis. When humans moved the fir trees down to botanical gardens in Beijing, they accidentally severed this sacred connection, separated from its invisible underground partner. The tree weakened and could not absorb nutrients, no matter how fertile the surrounding soil was. But if the three mother trees were still living with the fungal network on the mountaintop, why did their fallen seeds fail to germinate? The physical answer turned out to be brutally simple. The explosive growth of broadleaf species did not only steal sunlight, it also created a massive carpet of fallen leaves, dozens of centimeters thick, accumulating for decades on the forest floor. The fir seeds that fell never reached the mother soil. They were trapped on this dry layer of dead plant matter. When the embryos cracked open, their fragile young roots were blocked by the thick leaf litter and exhausted themselves completely before they could reach the living fungal network below, causing them to wither from their very first days. The million-dollar solution did not lie in sterile laboratories after all, but in the most ordinary tool, a metal rake. The conservation team carried out a humble step. With their bare hands, they carefully raked away the thick layer of fallen leaves beneath the mother trees, exposing bare soil filled with fungal spores. The result was beyond imagination. From a patch of land that had been almost sterile, producing fewer than 3 seedlings in 10 years, hundreds of green shoots now emerged at once. According to data recorded by 2026, with only that simple ground-clearing action, 687 naturally germinated seedlings had sprouted from the wild soil. Nature only needed humans to give it back a little open space and restore the forest floor to its original state. As 687 green shoots began anchoring their roots into the fungal soil layer, a fierce debate broke out within the scientific community. Was it worth spending enormous resources on a plant species that had lost its ecological function and could not survive on its own without humans raking away leaves? The answer struck a powerful blow against the skeptics, transforming this conservation campaign from saving a tree into saving humanity itself. Biochemists, who initially analyzed the tree's chemical structure in hopes of finding its cold resistance mechanism, accidentally isolated an entirely new group of molecules. Because they could not interfere with living individuals due to their extreme rarity, they collected and studied only peeling bark and dried needles that had fallen naturally. From these seemingly useless remains, science discovered unique diterpenoid compounds that had never appeared in any previous chemical literature. These strange molecular samples were sent to a laboratory at Purdue University. Using the most advanced technologies, the research team led by chemist Mingji Dai began dissecting their 3-dimensional structures and successfully created synthetic copies from simple starting materials. By early 2026, the latest preclinical reports confirmed a breakthrough. Synthetic analogues, based on the Baishan fir's diterpenoid structure, showed a powerful ability to inhibit the growth of several malignant human cell lines, while also showing enormous potential for developing a new generation of targeted therapies. This discovery immediately erased all doubts about the value of this tree, creating a shocking event that changed the perspective of the entire field of ecology. The Baishan fir was not a technology-dependent organism, but a vault of chemical codes forged by nature through 10,000 years of the Ice Age. This medical turning point proved that the survival of a tree once standing at the edge of total disappearance was directly linked to the hope of survival for seriously ill patients. It established a practical truth: when we allow a plant species to vanish because we think it is useless, we may accidentally be losing the cure for our own future generations. The area around the 3 ancient trees has now been upgraded into Qianjiangyuan by Shanzhou National Park. By mid-2026, thanks to the combination of microclimate sensor stations, drone networks scanning soil moisture, and manual techniques such as raking leaves and sowing seeds together with mycorrhizal fungi, the Baishan fir population has passed the mark of 4,000 healthy growing seedlings. Every spring, thousands of pale green cone clusters rise upward, creating a brilliant band of color against the harshness of the mist. The prehistoric biological bloodline has grown powerfully again on the slopes of Baishan. However, behind the widely announced achievements and articles praising this victory, this ideal model is hiding fatal ecological risks. The number of 4,000 seedlings may sound like a strong biological fortress at first, but in essence, it is a sterile fortress. This entire new generation faces severe inbreeding because it carries the same poor genetic foundation from exactly the 3 mother trees found in 1987. This lack of genetic diversity means they are a population of 4,000 individuals sharing the same core weakness. If just one unfamiliar fungal disease or one new leaf-eating insect variant appears, the entire population could decline together within only a few weeks. That genetic fragility is amplified by an even more troubling reality: this species is gradually losing its wild survival instinct. To survive, it now depends almost completely on human life support systems. If no specialists climb the mountain to rake leaves every autumn, the seeds cannot touch the soil. Without mist sprayers and shade control nets, young shoots will be immediately crushed by broadleaf vegetation. If funding is cut or the human hand withdraws, natural selection will once again eliminate them without mercy. And just as the problem of natural self-survival remains unsolved, a new threat has emerged from the very value of this tree. The discovery of malignant cell-inhibiting Diterpenoid compounds has pushed the Baishan fir into a struggle between intact conservation and medical commercialization. Pressure from pharmaceutical corporations seeking to exploit and move this rare genome into lowland commercial forests is growing. If these fir trees are torn away from their original mountain and turned into pharmaceutical production tools, are we stripping a prehistoric plant of its identity and its final chance for natural evolution? The 3 ancient trees still stand there, silent and proud on the same southern slope where they were first found. They survived the Ice Age by climbing to the mountaintop and waiting for the cold world to return. They survived the brutal industrial era, thanks to a group of patient people who searched carefully, humbled themselves, learned how to clear each dry leaf, and respected the invisible ecosystem beneath the soil. This revival is a profound lesson about the inseparable connections of the biosphere. This story is dividing conservationists into 2 opposing sides. One side supports using every intervention technology available to save a precious source of medicine for humanity. The other accepts the law of natural elimination rather than turning a wild species into a living entity, completely dependent on an artificial environment. Would you choose intervention at any cost? Or let nature decide? Comment your view and your reason below. If you enjoy difficult journeys of scientific investigation and nature conservation like this, hit subscribe, press like, and share this video to spread the story of the most resilient tree on Earth. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again in the next documentary episodes.